Have you never made homemade bread because it just seemed too daunting? Or maybe you're looking to add some Irish soda bread to your table that's not going to eat up all your bites, points, and calories. Well, I have the perfect solution for you here. This is my light Irish soda bread, one of the easiest ways to get into bread baking. So if you're ready to fill your home with a delightful aroma of freshly baked bread, stick around because I'm going to show you how to make this coming up next. Hello and welcome to my kitchen. My name is Roy. I'm a home cook and amateur baker, and I'm here on this channel sharing recipes that have helped me to lose over 125 pounds, whether those recipes are mine or someone else's. Now this week we're doing one of mine, but it's based on a bread that has been around for quite some time. It's for Irish soda bread. Now I've made Irish soda bread many times before, but I'm going to be experimenting today, trying to get one that's a little lower in bites, points, and calories. So hopefully the adjustments that I've made work out for us. If not, I will play around with it a little bit more, but I think this should work. Now I obviously got the idea to experiment with this because St. Patrick's Day is coming up, and actually on St. Patrick's Day we are doing a collab at 9 a.m. Eastern, and it is going to be what I'm calling Meatless March. So it's going to be meatless meals. So hit that notification bell so you know when that pops up. Now typically Irish soda bread is just 4 ingredients. It's usually flour, salt, baking soda, and buttermilk. Those are the 4 traditional ingredients. Over the years, it's been elaborated on. There have been add-ins like raisins or nuts added to it. But I'm just going for a plain one, but I'm not going that plain that I'm only using those 4 ingredients. Now, the traditional Irish soda bread has been around since the 1830s, when baking soda finally made its way into Ireland. And this became a very popular bread to make because anybody can make it. It's really not that difficult. So if you are a novice at making bread, then this might be the perfect solution for you. I also do have my Native American pan bread that I made a while back, and I'll card that here and link that down below. Now that one may be slightly easier, but not by much. This was made because it was accessible to anybody. If you had baking soda at the time, you could make some Irish soda bread. But as I said, I'm going a little beyond the typical, and I'm also trying to reduce the bites, points, and calories. So let's go over those ingredients. Here I have my cooking spray. Of course, I always have my cooking spray. And a lot of these recipes will have you butter the pot that you're going to cook it in, or the pan. I'm not doing that. I'm just using a little cooking spray. I have here 3 cups of all-purpose flour. I'm not using bread flour. Typically this is made with all-purpose because it was more accessible to people. Here I have 3/4 of a cup of plain non-fat Greek yogurt and 3/4 of a cup of almond milk. Both of those are at room temperature, and that is going to, when it's combined, become our buttermilk. Usually when I need a buttermilk substitute, I will substitute the non-fat Greek yogurt with some almond milk. In this case, I'm doing half and half. Often I will do a little bit more almond milk and a little bit less of the Greek yogurt, but we'll see how this plays out. Here I have 2 tablespoons of light butter. That is going to be melted, and obviously that is not standard, but it will give us a nice flavor to the bread. I have here 1 egg, yes, at room temperature. I know those of you who have been around are probably tired of hearing me say, have your ingredients at room temperature, especially when you're baking. But it really is true, and for newbies, I need to let them know too. But the egg is another departure from the traditional, but it is going to add a nice richness and tenderness and also some flavor to our bread. Here I have 2 teaspoons of baking powder, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, and 3/4 teaspoon of salt. Now if this is Irish soda bread, why am I not only using the baking soda, why do I also have baking powder? Well, baking powder is actually baking soda with an acid mixed in. And what that acid does is helps to react and create the bubbles and create the lift. Using part baking powder here is going to make sure that I have enough acid in here to give us the lift that we want. All right, and those are all of the ingredients that we're going to need. Let me shuffle a few things around and we'll get started. Now, before we go on with mixing our ingredients, I did want to go over what we are going to be baking this in. I am using a 10-inch Dutch oven, and I am not using the lid. You do not want to use the lid with this. But if you don't have a Dutch oven, don't worry about it. You can actually bake this on a baking sheet with a piece of parchment. The one thing about that is that it will spread a little bit more and be a little thinner than we will get from here because the sides of this pan are going to hold it in. Now, as I said, you don't have to use this, and if you don't want to use a baking sheet because you don't want it to spread too much, you could also use a 10-inch skillet. Typically, cast iron is what is typical and traditional, but any skillet should work. You could also use a 10-inch cake pan. That way you know that the sides are going to be held in and it's going to get more rise. Now, this is all going to be in the recipe, but any way you decide to bake it is fine. As I said, I'm using a cast iron and I did spray it with nonstick spray. Now, you can also use parchment. It's a little difficult in a round pan to use parchment because you're like, how do I cut this? How do I get it to lay flat? Well, one secret is you take your sheet of parchment and you crumple it all together. Now, what that does is gets the stiffness out of it and allows you to fit it into the pan a little bit more easily. I'm trying not to move it too much so I don't make too much noise while I'm trying to talk, but I'll show you what it looks like to put this in once you've wrinkled it. So you just open it up like I've done here and then just lay it in there. The one reason this is great is that you can then lift the bread out like this. So I think I'm gonna leave that in there, but you don't have to use the parchment. It should be just fine if you just spray the pan. So let me set that aside, and I'm going to bring in first my large bowl because we're gonna mix together our dry ingredients. Now, I was deciding whether I would do this in the stand mixer or not. You can do this in the stand mixer and it's much less work. Not that it's gonna be a lot of work here, but it is a little easier. And with my muscle issues, I was tempted, but I know a lot of people may not have stand mixers. So I wanted to show you how to do it by hand if that was your only option. Now, the directions for doing it both ways will be in the recipe. But we are going to start off by adding in the flour, baking powder, baking soda, salt, and just whisk that all through so that there are no pockets of salt or the leavener in there, so that the rise will be even. I've already had 2 little spasms and threw some of the flour out of the bowl. So I was tempted to switch over to the stand mixer, but I think I'll be fine. I'll push through. All right, so just mix that together. Then we're going to make a little well in the center, which just means you're just giving it a little dip in the center. So now set this aside, and I'm going to bring in my measuring cup. You could use a bowl if you want. I just figure it's a little easier with the measuring cup for me to pour it in and add in the Greek yogurt, almond milk, melted butter, and the egg. And then whisk it all together until it's homogeneous. Now I'm going to bring back in the flour mixture and pour in our wet ingredients. And now we're just going to stir this together. It will start to get a little too stiff, and then we're going to put it out onto the counter when it reaches that point. But for right now, we want to get this all combined. All right, so it's come together. It's a little stiff to work with, so we're going to put it out on the counter. But first we need to put down a little flour just to make sure that it's not going to stick. I will spread that around with my hands, also getting my hands coated with flour. Then we're going to turn out our dough and make sure you get everything out. As I always say, if you're spending the bites, points, and calories for it, you might as well get it all in there. Okay, now we're going to knead this for about 30 seconds. It doesn't take a lot. We just want it to come together. If it's still a little too sticky, you can add a little bit more flour as you go along. But kneading, all you want to do is just take it, turn it in on itself, and press it down. And you can pick up some flour, rub the dough off of your fingers to get that back into our dough here on the counter. And you can redistribute the flour as needed. Now it's not going to be a non-sticky dough. There will be a little bit of stickiness. You just don't want it sticking to the counter anymore. But that looks perfect right there. And now I'm going to lift it up and bring in my pan and just sit that right down in the center of the pan there. But we're not done yet. We're not ready to put this in the oven just yet. What we want to do now is score it. You want to cut an X into the top. And the reason you want to do that is because that is going to allow steam to escape and it's going to have a direction to go. If you didn't score the top, it might suddenly swell up on one side and you'd have a big crack on that side. So this basically guides the bread to rise in a way we want. It's also very decorative, so I'm sure you've seen images of breads with intricate little carvings on the top. And that is why, just to let the steam escape and that it won't escape somewhere else that you don't want it to escape. Now you can use a very sharp knife or just like a single blade razor will do it. You want to cut in about 1/4 to 1/2 inch deep, because if it's too shallow, all that's going to do is seal back up when it's baking. We don't want that. We want it to open up a little bit there and let the steam out. So we're going to make about 1/4 to 1/2 inch slices. Now what I'm using is a special tool that's called a bread lamb. It's basically a stick with a razor on it, and these are specially made for bread baking. But you don't have to go through all of that, obviously. You can just use a razor or a very sharp knife. But we're just going to cut right into the top, and it will drag a little bit, that's fine. And now that little cross there, some people believed it was for religious reasons, but it's really just to allow that steam to escape, as I said. And you'll see what it looks like when it comes out. If you've ever seen the Irish soda bread, you know it has that cross on the top that's a little lighter, and this is why. All right, so I have my oven preheated to 400 degrees. This will go into the oven for about 40 to 50 minutes. Now, one way that you can tell if it's done, it'll be brown, obviously, but if you lift it up and tap the bottom, it'll have a hollow sound. You can also simply take the temperature, stick a thermometer in there for a reading of 195, and you'll know it's done. But 40 to 50 minutes, and I'll be back with some fresh homemade bread. Okay, and there we have it. Beautiful Irish soda bread. And the top is firm, which is what you want. If you tap on it, you can hear a little hollow sound. That's what you're looking for, but I also did take the temperature. This took about 50 minutes exactly to get to the right temperature. So now what I want to do is carefully, because this pan is hot, I'm going to remove this to a cooling rack so that it can cool down. If we left it in the hot pan, it would steam a little bit on the bottom, and we don't want that. So let me get rid of this, and we're going to take that off of the parchment so it can cool and not sweat against the parchment paper. But there you have it, beautiful Irish soda bread. Now you can see where we split it. It's a little lighter in color than the outer edges. That allowed that steam to escape. Now this has to sit for at least 30 minutes to come to room temperature before you cut into it. You typically don't want to cut into bread when it's too warm. So let it cool at least 30 minutes. But it smells delicious. I hope we enjoy it as much as we enjoy the original. I will let you know right here if that is the case. Fingers crossed that this experiment worked out well. And if it did, I can give you the nutrition facts for this bread. This is going to serve 12, and each of those servings is going to be 3 Better Balanced Bites or Old Blue Points. I'm on the Healthy Better Balanced plan, which is equivalent to the old WW Blue plan, which is around where their current plan is. But if you were following calories, the calories for one serving would be 135. And if you were following macros, the fat is 1.5 grams. Saturated fat is 0.3 grams. Protein is 5.3 grams. Carbs are 24.6 grams. Fiber is 0.8 grams, and sugars are 0.6 grams for 1/12 of this bread. Typically, Irish soda bread is best within the first 2 days. Really, it's best the first day, but you can have it up to 2 days. But it freezes really well, so don't worry about that. You can even freeze individual slices. Take out a slice when you want it, just thaw it at room temperature, and you're good to go. Or you could let it sit out and get stale and make some French toast with it or bread pudding. It's your call, but this is going to be delicious. Now, I did forget to mention, especially in America, there tends to be a little sweetness to Irish soda bread sometimes, and you could add about a tablespoon or so of sugar if you really wanted to, but I don't think it's necessary. And you could include some of those add-ins I was talking about. Raisins are common, caraway seeds are common, nuts, but I like it just like this. But I hope that you enjoyed this video and this recipe, and if you did, I'd appreciate the usual. Like, subscribe, comment, share, hit that notification bell for the next time I upload any sort of video, such as if you are watching this on Friday that it comes out, March 8th, or the next morning. I am doing a live at 2 p.m. on Saturday, March 9th. I have a big announcement that I wanted to share with people, so I'm going to do a live and let you all know what that news is. So hit that notification bell so you're alerted. Now, if you want the recipe for this bread, that will be linked directly down below in the description box, as well as the link to the blog itself if you're looking for any of my recipes. Also down there is my Amazon storefront. If I've used anything on the channel that you're interested in, you can find it there, most likely. And I also have my social media down there, my Instagram and 3 Facebook groups that I'm part of. So check out the description box for all sorts of information. Well, I'm going to be patient and wait another 25 minutes before I cut in, but it's tempting not to. I hope that temptation will be on your table very soon. So until next time, bye.